Buenas and half a day. The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. We recessed till 2 p.m. However, it looks like we don't have a quorum right now. We got a quorum up here, though, so we'll take a short recess and await the arrival of our colleagues. Yeah, so, Masi. Short recess. We're back from recess, and we do have a quorum now. Thank you, colleagues. At this time, I'd like to ask our Sergeant-at-Arms to swear in the remaining panel members. We'll just do everybody all over again, if you don't mind. Sir, can you rise?
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, the oath affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mr. Chair, you're under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you, Sarge. Once again, colleagues, we're doing 2 rounds, 10 minutes. Third round is for amendments and comments. And we'll go ahead and start with the bill's primary sponsor, Senator San Nicolas. Senator San Nicolas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Doctors, this is for public health. I understand that you guys support this measure. Is there a way you can speed up inspections of the schools? I mean, what is your greatest hurdle? What causes the delay?
Good afternoon, Senator. So there is a way to speed up inspections. In fact, from the press release that our acting director had issued out yesterday, we're going to try to push and inspect the schools before the start of school day, first day of school. The problem is, on average, an inspection of a school takes roughly 1 week. Okay, twofold allows my inspectors to go out, public health inspectors to go out, inspect the school.
Dispensa, ma'am, could you just please state your name and title for the record,
absolutely.
and that goes for everybody who's going to speak. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. For the record, my name is Francine Salas. I'm a management analyst with the Division of Environmental Health for the Department of Public Health and Social Services. But sorry, Senator. So on average, it takes a week. The beauty of that, it allows our inspectors to make sure that everything is in compliance with the sanitation rules and regulations, but it also allows for GDOE, facilities and maintenance, to follow the inspectors around and make necessary corrections on site, or maybe the next day when my inspector comes, hey, we fixed this and this and this, so that would reduce the total number of demerits. So the process itself is actually collaborative to a certain extent because it allows GDOE to respond. Right now, if we're going to move up the process, which we can, 41 demerits is considered failing. So my inspectors are out of school today, and as soon as the school hits 41 demerits, and it really depends, it could be in the first 2 hours, it could be half the day, depending on how far they've gotten in the demerit accumulation. If they hit 41 demerits, we will leave for the day, allow them a day or so to correct the spots, and if we come back the next couple days, see if they've made the corrections enough to bring them below the 41, and we'll continue the inspection. The thing is once the school hits 41 demerits, they cannot operate. They've pretty much failed inspection. So should Bill 317 pass the way it is written now, they had failed before the enactment, so they won't be able to operate if we were to shut down that school.
Thank you, ma'am. And I mean, could you explain to me, like, because I've been getting some information from out on the field. A demerit could be like a small little chip on a desk, or scribbled markers on a desk. That would be a demerit. Is that true?
So every single regulation has a public health reasoning behind it. And so a demerit of, the idea of a scribble or graffiti on a desktop wouldn't necessarily earn you 1 demerit for 1 desk. But if you have 25 classrooms wherein all the desks are not in good working condition, they're chipping, nails are coming out of it, they could be hurtful, they're just a dangerous impediment to students, then yes, that would be something. And the demerit would be, it'd be related, but that wouldn't really be the big concept. One scribble, 1 scratch is not the whole school. And so the way we give demerits, it's 1 or all. So if we, for example, find 1 wall that is completely dirty and not maintained, we'll give you the demerits for not having maintained walls. But if you fix that one and you have 2 others that are in the same condition, you're still going to get the demerit, as opposed to addressing each wall.
Thank you, ma'am. I mean, it sounds very stringent. There's one more question that I had,
Sure.
and it had to do with paint. So, you know, I too was an educator, and I like to go in and paint, you know, my class. You know, it enhances learning. Mm-hmm. Is there a certain type of paint that is allowed and not any other?
So the regulation actually calls for paint light in color. We understand that there are numerous schools with different school colors. They want to show school pride. It builds morale up, artistic expression. And so we don't necessarily say you can't have murals up. But if it's not light in color, how would you be able to see mold? How would you be able to see dirt? So in this situation, presenting a variance, applying for a variance, wherein we could say, this wall is obviously not meeting the regulations, but this is what we're going to do to make sure it stays clean, free of mold, free of dirt. And so let's say we flush it down, you know, every other week, or however the plan is, or whatever's proposed. Those type of proposals actually still meet the public health reasoning, although by definition they're not in compliance with regulations. So it'd be something that I would present to my director, and it would be up to her to sign it. But if it doesn't cause any immediate health hazard or nuisance, and you presented a plan that would actually give proper mitigation of potential risks, then you're fine.
So you're saying that a color of a paint matters okay.
It really does, in the ability to see dirt, see mold, and respond to it. Much in the same way some are regulations for restaurants. You really shouldn't be having dark walls in your kitchen because you might not be able to see grease, dirt, dust. And so it's the same kind of rationale.
Have you, maybe this is for Department of Education, you know, we live in a very humid, you know, climate and all that stuff. So I wonder if there's any small measure that could quite possibly be doing to minimize mold, or try to, because, you know, at home I use a dehumidifier, and it really cuts down on moldy smell and the mold itself. Have you ever or kind of like put into action something like that? Maybe perhaps something small that we could do to manage maybe a classroom with a dehumidifier or anything like that?
Senator St. Nicholas, thank you very much for that question. I just needed to consult with the superintendent to see if he was the one that wanted to answer your question, but nonetheless, I think every school is sort of handling this situation a little bit differently, but we do have air purifiers in most of our schools, and I'm sure they're using them. I mean, I don't know that to be a certainty or a fact, but I'm sure that they're using those, as well as these type of fans that I see to my right. We have quite a bit of those fans in our schools as well, and so schools are, you know, utilizing them to make sure that we minimize the humidity inside the classrooms. We're also, with our custodial contracts right now, this is the time for deep cleaning, so a lot of the work that's being done to thoroughly clean these rooms is being done by the contractor that we have in place for custodial services. And again, it's deep cleaning, so a lot of the high dusting and some of the real thorough type of cleaning that they typically do reserved for summer is currently being done right now.
Thank you, sir. So that device that you're talking about, those are air purifiers. Is that correct? They're air purifiers.
I believe so.
They look like little. I mean, they look like nuclear reactors on the back of the room. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, first of all, let me just correct myself and say my name is Christopher Anderson. I'm the Administrator for Student Support Services Division, so I can put that on record. Again, I don't know the exact mechanics of the machines that we have in our schools, but I believe they were purchased by Carrier primarily due to the COVID issue. And my understanding is that that's what they do. They purify air inside the rooms that they're located.
Yes, very interesting. I actually been to the schools and I actually see them. They're really huge machines.
Yes.
In the back, yeah. No, that's good. That shows progress.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Chair, I have nothing further. Thank you for your answers. Thank you so much.
Senator San Nicolas. Senator Fisher, you have the floor. Do you have any questions for the panel?
Yes, thank you very much. I guess I'd begin, well, I think the gentleman who's going to have all the answers to my questions is Dr. Swanson. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Senator.
Thank you. According to the language of intent, well, the section 1 of the bill, it looks like 19 schools will not be ready under the current regime. Under the current regime, it looks like 19 schools will not be ready to open, according to the according to what we are saying. Do you agree with that?
First of all, my name is Dr. Eric Swanson. I'm the superintendent of schools.
I'm sorry, sir, I can't hear you.
I just introduced myself. I'm Eric Swanson, the superintendent of schools. And to answer your question, as I understand it, the schools that have not been inspected under the current situation, as the timeline that's in the existing law closed out at the end of the 23-24 school year, if we don't have that extension to continue to do the work to get the schools all inspected, then I won't be able to, under the current regulations, open the schools. That's my understanding.
Okay, so unless there's a change in law or miraculously 19 schools get up to speed, it looks like today, at this point, without some sort of a modification by the legislature, 19 schools will not be able to open. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I'd remind the body that a year ago, it was all 41 schools.
Okay. Do you have, I know this might be a bit of a surprise to you, but do you have could you ballpark, what is the population of the 19 schools?
We're right at 12,000 students.
Okay. So unless we fix this, and let's be frank, this was our mistake. This is all on us. Unless we fix it, 12,000 students are going to be thrown in, to be charitable, I suppose. They're going to be thrown into complete uncertainty as to their educational future?
Well,
in the short term, I suppose.
The only thing I can say is that we would have to place them in an alternate setting, which could be online, it could be in an alternating situation we had to do last year, where we had 2 schools using the same campus on alternating days.
Okay.
Neither of those are desirable eventualities.
Okay. In your estimation, in your experience here on Guam, I mean, you've become, either forcibly or not forcibly, you've become familiar with the idea of double sessioning and online learning. Is that correct?
Yes, I have.
In your estimation, is online learning a suitable and adequate substitute for in-person learning?
In general, that depends entirely on the student and the teachers involved. However, in our community, it seems that has not been an effective tool,
Okay.
and we're reluctant to use it.
But I guess necessary nevertheless, but it hasn't been very successful. I would like to talk a little bit about double sessions. Do double sessions present any challenges to students and student learning?
Yes, they do. Hours of the day that students are in session, either early the normals, like usually beginning at 6 a.m., or staying later into the evening. So that is a significant challenge to the students, plus transportation issues, going home in the dark, coming to school in the dark. Raises parent concerns, and students are not altogether at ease with it either.
Okay, and as I also understand it, I mean, you just mentioned the idea that students who have to double session are getting up when it's dark and sometimes not getting home or back to bed until after the sun has gone down. These are children who are developing physically, emotionally, psychically, spiritually. The interruptions in their rest cycle and just the construct of their daily life for children, I'm talking about. Do you have an opinion on whether or not that is disruptive to the developing child?
Depending on a child, it certainly can be disruptive and stressing, to say the least, because it also interrupts the normal rhythm of the family's daily life.
Okay. My concern, sir, is, addressing the 19 schools. I understand that they still have certain problems. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't be in this category. Nevertheless, in those 19 structures, those 19 schools, do you feel that the Department of Education can educate children?
I believe we can, and we have been doing that successfully, and they can demonstrate that from the experience last year. We're taking precautions to make sure that we're using in campuses that still need further work, that we're using areas that are not a hazard to the students.
Okay.
And
so you are taking charge of our young people and doing your best to educate as well as keep them safe?
yes, of course, and our principals really prefer to have them at school face-to-face, as do we.
Yeah, I visited some of the schools, I think that are probably on this list, and I see a very dedicated crew of individuals, and I'm speaking about the teachers, the support staff, everybody else. I've noticed that there's been a very dedicated phalanx, for want of a better word, of individuals who are trying to get this accomplished. That has been, I'm sure others may have different experiences, but my experiences are well, they're my experiences. I am confident that parents all over the island are paying very, very close attention to what is happening in this session today and tomorrow as we deal with this. We have parents, dual income households in which both parents obviously are working, and if we have to go to online for 12,000 students, that is going to create an extraordinary amount of upheaval, not just in the children's lives, but in the children's families' lives. So I'd like to prevent that if at all possible. I also worry about poor children, and I think it was my friend Senator San Nicolas who initially spoke about the wonderful collateral effect of the public education system, which is feeding children and feeding the poor and giving them 2 hot meals a day or 2 nutritional meals a day, also giving them a place where there is electricity, also giving them a place where it is safe, also giving them a place where it may be that the only person that they can identify in their life who seems to care for them is their teacher and their school, and the environment in the school becomes extraordinarily important to their psychological well-being. So I want to get the schools open, sir. And I want to get the children in the schools, and I want that to happen without inhibition without disruption. I'm sure everybody grasps this, but a lost school day is beyond recovery. You cannot create a new day for the children to learn. So if we lose a school day, we're never going to get it back. We're going to permanently and irretrievably cripple these children. and that is not satisfactory to you, certainly, and Dr. Swanson, and it's certainly not satisfactory to me or I think anybody else in this body, and it's certainly not satisfactory to the children, and it's not satisfactory to the parents. So, sir, if we can get this roadblock out of your way, can we get those students in their chairs on the first day of school with a full belly, looking forward to a lunch that they will enjoy, and in a warm, safe environment where people care about them? I know that's a long question.
The short answer to that is yes. The
Okay.
work and processes we developed over the last year, working with our partners in public health, we're able to handle that work
Okay.
and operate our program successfully.
Okay. I think that we, myself included, I'm as guilty as anybody in this room of this, we treated the Department of Education as a bit of a political football, and we thought we would weigh in and show you guys how to run the operation, and it didn't work out very well. And who suffered? Not us. The children did. And to you, Dr. Swanson, and the entire Department of Education, I would like to sincerely say thank you for working through and in adverse times without, you know, maybe advertent support from the legislature. I know people in the Department of Education. I know teachers. I was in another lifetime, I myself was a teacher. I know the work is hard. I know that you are underpaid from the top to the bottom. I know you are underpaid and you were yelled at more than any other agency. I just want to express my profound thanks for getting the schools open, and profound thanks for the service that you are performing for the people of Guam and the children. Keep it up. Keep those kids educated. Please, and I want to just thank you very much. And sir, I don't have any further questions.
Sido Smasia, Senator Fisher. Senator Kanata, did you have any questions for the panel? I'm just going to back up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly just want to give thanks to each and every one of you guys for coming out today. Really appreciate it. I know you guys have a lot of things to do as well. Your schedules are just as busy as ours. But I do have a question to pose to Public Health and DOE. We all certainly are going to be participating hopefully this weekend in a primary election, and it's brought to my attention, and particularly we need to do a public notice if there is a site change, and at this time if schools are on the table to be closed and basically not able to facilitate anything until cleared from Public Health. Do we see that as being a potential issue for this primary election? If these school facilities that are quote unquote going to be used to facilitate the election, do we have an option for the other precincts? Because if the schools are closed and we kind of have students in it, then do we have elections in it? Because GEC is going to have a real tricky situation in facilitating in one law, and then the other law, they cannot do public notice. I think it's 90 days for a precinct to be advertised. So if the school is the precinct isn't advertised for 90 days, then they cannot have an election or host that precinct or that polling site until it's publicly noticed 90 days. So if this Saturday and we have the election and the school is not open, where do we have the election for that school or that precinct or poll? Sorry, that's a lot, but yeah.
I think the question was for Public Health. Yeah.
Half a day, Senator. So the sanitary permit that we permit is for schools to operate with school-related activities. So registration, interscholastic sports, classes, teachers coming ahead of the time school starts and decorating their classroom and setting up. Those are all considered school-related activities. For the sake of a school hosting a polling site, we don't permit the school facility for that purpose. But your question is fair. If it's not safe for school operations, should it be safe as a polling site? That's that's beyond our scope. But as far as I understand it, the location can operate as something that we don't permit, unrelated to school activities.
DOE, do you have anything to add?
Hi, my name is Barbara Adamas, Deputy Superintendent of Educational Support and Community Learning. We actually had the legal counsel from the Guam Election Commission speak to our legal counsel, and they reiterated the same thing, that the elections are not a school-operated function. And so the elections are still able to carry on as normal. And if we don't have this bill passed and the schools are shut down, that's the irony or the conflict. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Adamas and Ms. Salas. Another question, when do the schools officially become closed or shut down? Do we have a date particular for each school, or is it just in general?
That the timing of that is upon inspection, when, as was stated, once they reach the 14 demerits and it's a failing grade, then if the school is in operation and we were not able to use variances and clear the demerits, then that would be the following school day. So if that inspection's happened before the beginning of the school, then I can't open the school. I have to do something with educational program, but I can't do the program on site.
Okay. Any comment from public health?
So based on Public Law 3732, our interpretation was it ended, it said school year 23-24. And as I understand it, that school year has come and gone. So technically, those schools that have yet to be inspected should not be operating, should not be doing any registration or any of those kinds of activities, school-related activities that I mentioned.
Okay, thank you. There is potentially going to be an amendment to the legislation regarding allowed and permitted school facilities. Do you have any recommendations other than having the school permitted for use versus being allowed to proceed? I mean, like, I guess allowed operation versus permitted operation, because permitted is like more like, I mean, they're kind of the same thing, right? But I think the terminology legally is different, variant-wise.
I believe it comes down to context. You're right, depending on how it is said, it could mean the same thing. The only question would be if someone assumes that a school is permitted conditionally to operate, then the notion is that public health said it was okay.
Okay. Nothing further, Mr. Chair. That's pretty much it. Thank you again.
Senator San Nicolas. Senator San Augustine, to afford you the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, just a follow-up to the question that Public Health mentioned, if allowed. Does Public Health have the ability to inspect the schools today? All of them that needs to clear? Let's start with that. Yes or no?
Today,
Yeah, if all the schools are ready to go, are you ready to inspect them?
we can, whether they're ready to go or not, we can, not today, but I can inspect it in the next 2 weeks. That's the commitment my acting director has made.
That's all 24 schools you can inspect.
No, not 18 left.
18 left. You can inspect all 18.
Yeah, but I can't guarantee you they're going to be open.
I didn't ask you that question. I asked you for the inspection part.
That's correct.
Now, back
We
to the
can.
superintendent. Can you have schools ready for them to inspect and pass, or at least request for a variance so that you can pass and be able to open.
We have certified that our schools are ready to open. However, the planning for the inspection has been in a sequence. So we have teams that are working ahead of the inspection team so that we prepare them because we know what they're looking for, so we can make sure that's there. So that has not been done in all the schools, and I must remind this body too that 10 of those schools are going into a major refurbishment. And those contracts have now been released, and the contractor's been given the order to proceed. Those schools won't be finished and ready for inspection until probably March or April.
So what is your course of action then if they're not going to be ready?
I
They can't even be seen by public health.
I would continue the same model that we've been doing for the last year, where we make the campus safe and have it clean until we can have the inspection happen. And we've been working, averaging 1 or 2 in inspection at the time simultaneously. We're finishing up 2 this week. So we continue to march on that. Because like I said before, I want to remind everyone that a year ago, we didn't have any that were past inspection, except 1. And we've made an awful lot of progress in that time.
Okay. So when public law or Bill 37-32 expired, what were you working with then during that fiscal year? That school year? What were you working with? The authorization to open up as long as you got a so-called green or yellow light from public health? Is that what you were doing?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Okay.
Oh, last year, what were we doing?
Today you have 18 schools that need to be inspected. That's what public health says. Yesterday, did you still have 18? Or was it 24, or was it 26, or what? What was the number? Because if it's 18 today, what was yesterday's?
Officially, yesterday it was 19.
It was 19.
Today it's 18.
Okay, before the school ended, how many schools needed to be inspected so that you can pass this coming school year?
During the course of this school year, I believe we'll be able to get them all to pass.
They all pass.
If we can stay with the same format that we've been using through the last year, we will be able to get them all certified and passed, and then also be able to begin recertifying the ones that were certified earlier.
I'm just trying to understand, Dr. Swanson, how did you pass the school year of 24, but you can't even be ready to be inspected, the 18 school to pass for 25, FY 25?
We've been working in all the campuses through the year to improve the conditions that are there, but having them ready for inspection in the detailed level that is required takes that on-site team with eyes on this, with the inspectors, to be sure that we have it right, because we're in a no-fail situation.
Dr. Swanson, in the school year of 24, all your schools were open, correct? Other than Simon Sanchez and FB Languro, correct or not?
That's correct.
Okay. Why wouldn't you be ready to get inspected to pass the other 18 schools now? I'm just trying to understand why you're not able to. Other than what the governor signed these contract for $70 million, why wouldn't the schools be ready to be inspected to pass again? I mean, how bad, Marwar was early last year. It's over a year now. I'm just trying to understand what was the mechanism that prevents you from being ready. So public health, because they're ready to go. They're ready to go in 2 weeks. They're ready to go in there and says, okay, like Francine said, you may not pass, but you're ready to be inspected. And my concern is that the same checklist they're going to use is what DOE should be using anyway to make sure you pass. I'm just trying to understand, why wouldn't you be ready if you did pass? You know, it wasn't 2-3 years ago when you passed. It was in 2024. Am I correct?
I would put it this way. We could have the inspections right away. I wouldn't want to leave passing to chance. It's a large system. We have a number of folks working on the issues that face each of our campuses. So there, it takes a concerted effort on our part to make sure that the school passes when it's inspected. Because last year, when we had 2 schools that failed, I closed those schools.
And which schools were they?
I'm sorry?
Which schools?
Tamuning Elementary and Weddingdale Elementary.
You closed them, and what happened to the students?
They had to be re-inspected, so they had about a 2 to 4 week period to correct the deficiencies, then be re-inspected to open again.
What was the status of the students when you closed the school? That's what I need to know.
They went into one campus went into an alternating day shared another campus, and the Tamuning students went online.
Okay, of the 18 schools that needs to be inspected, does DOE have a plan that if you need to alternate because you won't pass the inspection, are you ready to do that? No? Yes? Got 18 schools. I don't know what they are. Are they elementaries, they're middle schools, they're high schools?
What's the problem?
Do you have a plan to do your alternate like you did this year? The 2 schools. You do?
Okay. For the remaining schools, half of those schools are going to be involved in refurbishment. So they will be in the second half, so that I've already got a sequence of schools to inspect and we have 2 teams of maintenance folks that work through all of the possible areas to be inspected, and they're working in tandem, and as they bring the school up, and so we will continue to do that. The ones that are not going to be in the refurbishment process will be inspected first, because we have to allow the contractors time to do the work on the other campuses. And then as soon as they're done, they'll be inspected.
Okay, understood. Now, based on this bill that introduced by Senator Nicholas and co-sponsored with myself, have you been working out with public health to figure out how you can get by with any variance or anything so that you can kind of like get maybe a yellow light from public health saying you can open, but this area has to be closed and so forth? Have you been working that out? Because I'm in support to give you the authority to do what you need to do to keep students in. But at the same time, we're not going to kick this can down the road. This can's got to stop and get off the road. School's got to be cleaned up, got to be squared away. Have you been working with public health to make sure there's no more cans on the road? That's what I like to know, Dr. Swanson.
Okay, well...
Because remember, your budget is coming up, and if we're going to find a way to fund you, why fund you if you're not getting fixed? Why fund you if you got a bunch of ARP money and you're not getting school fixed? That's my concern. That's what falls on my shoulders now. So I got my big eyes on you guys, because you're the biggest agency. So I want to help you, but I don't know how to help you. I don't know how you and public health are working out, whatever you need to work out, so you can keep schools open.
We are using the guidance from public health, and we work very closely with them. In fact, weekly, we meet with them to make sure that we're on the same sheet of music. So my maintenance team has gone from 30 people to 50 over the last year. We've been able to make our teams more deployable and able to go out and not only do the work it takes to bring schools up to inspection, but also respond to regular maintenance calls on other campuses that are not involved with inspection. So we've made a lot of progress in this. What I need is the same time capacity that we had up until the end of the school year in '24 to continue for one more year. By that time, we'll be able to get everything, all the schools inspected, and begin the cycle of reinspection for the renewal process.
So you need this bill to pass so that you can go through that program. I'm concerned about public health. Are you ready to say that you could work with this with DOE? Because if you really can't, I don't want to put the burden on you folks that, hey, go and inspect them, find out what's going on. If they're working with you already, you pretty should have already a warm and fuzzy feeling which school can pass and which one is just forget it. You might as well shift. I mean, we have to be realistic about it, okay? Remember, I was on the board of education when they shut down a bunch of schools, 10 schools in a row, and we've turned that around real quick. And I'm just concerned is how does public health feel about what they're doing at DOE that you can kind of feel a little bit comfortable when you walk in there? Because I know Francine's going to walk in there, and if you don't pass, it doesn't matter. You ain't passing. Have a nice day. Next. And I just want to, yeah, and you're not a hardball player. I know that. But I'm just saying, how can we work it where DOE can get a yellow light? Not necessarily a total green, because there's going to be areas in the school. There's no way you're going to be ready to fix it. There's no way you're going to meet it, totally. But you can keep the school open. Shut down one corner of the campus or whatever. Keep the schools open. Keep the students in one place. Because every time you have to shift, that's a major operation to shift. Half day here, half day there, a disruption on parents. And there's a lot of things happening. Education is, it just doesn't exist. It starts getting weakened. And I'm just concerned, does public health have a warm and fuzzy feeling out of the 18 that could, might? Go ahead, Francine, go for it. I've known you for years, so go for it, Francine.
Half a day, Senator. So the order in which we inspect schools normally is at GDOE's readiness, self-assessment readiness. So when they do, they submit to us a map of areas they've cordoned off, as well as to explain to us why it's cordoned off and what they will do to sort of mitigate, activity near or in that area. So we're already putting that into practice. As for the remaining 18, we don't have enough staff to do early assessments, pre-assessments, but if GDOE, because they're doing their own self-assessments, which they have to, if their degree of readiness from their, as I understand it, their facilities and maintenance team assesses, but so does the school, and the school safety officers also assess, because we train them. And based on their findings, the list we put out and the list that GDOE has is pretty much the same, which tells me the bottom of the list has major work to be done, that you can't cordon off. If you cordon off too much of it, you won't be meeting the population requirement. You're going to be crammed. The schools are going to be much smaller, and it won't meet the population requirements.
Okay, Dr. Swanson, how many schools are those? There's no way they're going to meet it. I mean, there's certain things you just can't kid yourself. There's no matter what you do until constructions go full-blown in your areas. How many schools out of the 18 we're looking at? 5, 6, 7, 8? Hopefully not 10.
Okay, can you repeat the question? Because you got me confused. And I'm deaf, so.
Okay, now don't worry. I'll speak loud enough for you, Dr. Swanson. Public Health stated that you're going over your list. You're doing your own assessment, okay? Not a problem. They train your people, so they know, your people know what they need to do. They said that there's probably at the bottom of the list of the 18, there's some schools that it's almost impossible to pass. I mean, there's no sense walking in there when you already know it's a shutdown. I'm concerned is how many schools are those? Because even if this law was to pass, you can't open that school because it's too dangerous for kids, for the students. It's too dangerous for the staff. So how many schools could that be, total out of the 18?
At this point, our schools are at the condition that they were at the end of the school year or better. I don't think I have any that are unsafe to open.
Okay.
That's a difference, but that is different than passing the inspection. But we're making sure that we have any area that's not safe for kids to be in, that's cordoned off. We don't allow them in there, and they're supervised. So the list as it exists right now has the schools that are going to be in the refurbishment process at the bottom, because we know they're going to come last in the inspection process.
How many schools are those? How many schools are those, Dr. Swanson? That's on the bottom of the list. That'll be the last one.
10.
About 10 out of the 18?
Yes.
Okay.
If I may just clarify, sir, for Senator San Augustin's question. So as Francine alluded to, right, part of DOE's process is to do self-inspections. So we do 2 self-inspections per year, pretty much following the same guidelines that public health does. And as Francine indicated, our folks are trained. Every school has 2 school safety liaisons that are trained by them, And then 2 times out of the year, they'll go through and they'll use the inspection checklist and do a self-inspection of their own facility. Or, well, this year they did it at their own facility. Next year it's going to be switched up to where they have to more independently observe a different school. But nonetheless, our public health inspection summary has information that indicates the inspection that was just done in July and the total number of demerits from that self-inspection. And based on that information is where Dr. Swanson is indicating 10 schools that had, based on their self-inspection, had given themselves a demerit score of 41 or greater. And so that just gives us an idea of those schools, again, that have some real issues that we're going to need to focus on.
You know, when the schools do their own inspection, because I know I don't know how many of my colleagues, they get requests from the different schools for help, from other folks, nonprofit, and all that. I'm just concerned is that 10 schools out of 18, when they're doing their assessment, what is the proactiveness of Department of Education to help them move along and get off the 41, get down to 20 or 30, God, get close to 0. I mean, it's almost impossible right now, but I'm just trying to find a way.
Well, I think we are making great progress, or better progress than we did last year. And to your earlier question, in terms of the difference between last year and where we're at now, Public Law 3732 was basically what was salvation for the department, because it allowed us to operate pending inspections. So, with the exception of those schools that failed inspections prior to the law being passed that could not operate pending a reinspection from public health, the rest of our schools were able to open on time. But what was helpful was in that bill, in that law, again, it allowed us to operate pending inspection, and so it allowed us to, again, work with public health. And we have, I think, a pretty good working relationship where we meet weekly to address issues that we're experiencing with the inspections. And again, what's the order of march in terms of the next schools up for inspections. But we've been, I mean, public health, as they've indicated, they're able to do simultaneous inspections. And I don't think, although they probably would like to have more inspectors, I don't think the issue is insufficient inspectors to be able to effectively inspect all our schools on time. It's been really DOE who's been slow and methodical in terms of when to turn the inspections on. And we do greatly appreciate public health giving us that kind of flexibility and work with us to allow us to be the ones to say, okay, this school is ready to be inspected. And typically we use a 90% or better confidence rate to turn a school on for inspection. But that's been the ops tempo, if you will. That's been sort of how we've been operating throughout the year is, you know, again, Jim and his team, they are dispatched to a school that we identified that's going to be up for inspection, and they're there for 4 to 6 weeks doing nothing but preparing that school for the inspection. And then again, based on the principal and then FM's, you know, team giving us an indication that they're 90% or more confident that the school is going to pass the inspection, then we turn that on with public health and say, okay, let's go ahead and turn this school on for an inspection. That's sort of how we've been operating, and that's, even though we didn't get to 41 schools this year or before the end of 23-24, I think we've made some good progress, and we've gotten at least a little bit over half of our schools inspected and passed. Just that we are going to need more time. And as I shared in my public testimony during the hearing for the bill, I mean, we have over $250 million, and I believe that's the amount that's been identified in deferred maintenance. So there's a lot of challenges to our facilities that need to be addressed. And, you know, that's not going to be addressed overnight, even if the bill was passed, you know, 5 years ago, or the law was passed 5 years ago that talked about the department being in full compliance with these regulatory requirements in 5 years. The challenge is that, you know, resource issues are a reality. And until we get full resources to adequately fix our facilities, this is going to be a challenge that we're going to have to address each year. We do have some ARP money contracts that are going forward, and that will definitely be of great assistance. But I think in general, the department has had real challenges with getting the financial resources it needs to effectively address its facilities. And this has, you know, made it difficult for us to be able to pass some of these inspections.
All right. When you mentioned last year, you have 18 schools, right, that need to be inspected. There's 41 schools. So when we do the math for that, that comes down to what, 23? Correct? 23 passed, right? 23 and 18 is 41, right? Close enough? Okay.
Right.
The 18, You just need to get over this bill to get over that hurdle so you can continue to fixing and get the 18 inspected. Am I correct? That's what I'm trying to understand, right?
Yes, sir. Jim Pangilinan, other facilities and maintenance manager. I just want to try to confirm. I know that you're trying to get something out of us, but let me tell you, we have a process with public health right now, right? So we go in, inspect the school, we go in and do repairs. Sometimes we say, okay, it's going to be 3 weeks. Then we break into the walls, then there's much more work, right? So we're looking at 6 weeks. So this is this is not just one school, this is throughout all the schools. It's a problem that has existed for many years. We're just, now that we are being held to a standard by public health, and now we are identifying what truly is going on at DOE. And it's something that Dr. Swanson and his group is addressing, and I think we're doing our best. He has a vision, and we are moving towards that vision, and we need this bill to continue on his vision to complete everything by the end of this fiscal year. And right now we have so much things going on. We have the fencing contract. We also have the refurbishment contracts. We're working on a contract to refurbish all the restrooms and bring them up to ADA compliancy, because that is another challenge that we are facing now. There's just so much going on, and whatever is not covered with the minimal team that we have at F&M, we are addressing those issues in-house. So we are doing our best, and if this bill does pass, and I thank you for doing this bill, you will see great results at the end of this fiscal year. Thank you.
Mr. Franklin, Jimmy, out of the 41 schools, you're down to 18. So 23 are good to go, correct?
Correct.
Just say yes. Everybody just say yes, because that's all we're looking at is 18. Because that's what you're trying to complete the years. The other 18 needs to be inspected. Then the cycle starts all over again. Then they start with number 1, and they go down until they get to whatever number. I'm just concerned is that when I asked about the 18, the number came up that 10 may not even make it. So we're down to 8 versus this school year that ended in May. Everybody was good to go with the blessing of the superintendent saying it's safe to open, not fully inspected yet. That was the catch-22 there. And I'm just concerned is that when we grant you the permission to do that, how does public health catch up? Because, and I know where Mr. Magnin is coming from. When you start repairing something, next you know, not just water fountain, it's the whole pipeline of water is all messed up. But I'm just concerned that how do we work it where, and I mentioned earlier, we don't have to kick the can down the road. We want you to get fixed, because no matter how you look at it, the schools are over 30, 40, 50 years old. Okay? And I'm just concerned that when public health is going trying to inspect you, they can train you all night long. It don't mean anything when you can get by, because why? The building is just terrible. The water line is terrible. The bathrooms getting destroyed by kids themselves. They're not destroyed by adults, they're destroyed by kids. I'm just concerned about the 18 left. Can at least tell us that it's not 10, it's less than 10? So that when we say we want this law passed to allow you some flexibility, you can do it. And with that, I'm out of time, and if you can answer it, good. If not, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Senator, if I could just clarify one thing. I think it's important to make a distinction between schools that are safe to operate and open versus those schools that are ready to pass an inspection, because they're very different. As far as I understand, all 41 schools have submitted their declarations that they're ready to open on time. And the principals have declared that their schools are safe to open on time. That's different from whether a school is ready to pass a public health inspection, because obviously the standards are a little bit more rigorous for us to have to meet. And so we have schools that are safe, but can they pass an inspection today? Probably not.
Thank you, Administrator Anderson. And just as a point of information to Senator San Augustine, I know you've expressed a great deal of interest in the 18 schools awaiting inspection. And on the Guam Department of Education website, you can find the GDOE self-inspection reports. And according to their reports, 14 of the 18 schools awaiting inspection have failed the GDOE self-inspection. So it's a little more than 10 schools, and that data is on the website if you want to check that out. Just for clarification, sir. Senator Taitigui, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, can you give us a minute so that we can then go to the DOE website to pull up that information? Can you just give us 1 minute?
Of course. Let's take a short recess, colleagues. We're back from recess. Senator Titagui, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel who's here this afternoon to answer our question, especially to Department of Public Health and Social Services, because when we had the public hearing on the 24th of this month, Public Health was not present at the time. You did submit written testimony, but it made it kind of difficult because you basically are the check and balances between Department of Education and your office, your agency. That's why I'm a bit confused about this self-inspection by by DOE. Self-inspection, so they create their own guidelines, or is this something that you helped DOE to create on their self-inspections, because this would probably be the most important part? So my question to Francis or to Deputy Director, right? Are you still the Deputy Director? Things switch a lot sometimes, so Mr. Hogan, so can you tell me, did you assist them in creating this template of self-inspection?
I do not. We did not.
Okay.
It might have been something that was developed with, we've had prior task force and prior projects at which we were attempting to, address GDOE's challenges in getting up to the inspection, in compliance with the regulations. So I don't think we directly helped them shape the checklist, but I think Chris Anderson could answer more to the effect of how that was created.
Yes, that would be a good idea. Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Senator Titagui, for that question. The document that the schools are using to submit their self-inspection reports is basically following the same checklist that Public Health uses in terms of their inspection when they go out and do their work at the schools. So, I mean, it is our document. It's not something that Public Health provided to us, but we're basically just mirroring the major areas that they look for when they come in and do their inspections. And so, again, the schools are trying to mirror what a public health inspector would do when they walked in and did an inspection.
Thank you. And on the demerits for public health, this question is for you on the demerits. When a school fails inspection, how many demerits before you decide to stop right now because they've already failed? What is that number?
So in the normal course of an inspection, a regular inspection of a school takes about a week. We would keep going until we have finished the scope of the inspection, completely unrelated to the number of demerits racked up so far. A facilities and maintenance individual is following around our inspectors, and if they can make corrections in the course of the duration of the inspection, they do, which demerits tend to be removed, and if you see the inspection reports, it says COS, means corrected on this on-site.
It's a great check and balance there.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But in addition to that, because if we are going to hasten the inspections, 41 would be the number we would stop at.
Okay. So, Mr. Anderson, on your self-inspection, what is is your demerit where it would not pass on your self-inspection? Do you have a number in which you finally decide this is not going to pass?
Yes, we use the same standard of 41.
41?
I was making, I was asserting to this earlier when the question was asked of the 18, how many schools, are in a situation they wouldn't pass an inspection. We were sort of gauging ourselves based on the self-inspection reports and the score that the school assigned themselves, but it is 41.
Okay. So that being said, this bill that we in front of us today, Bill 317, the difference between this bill and public law, the public law 37-32, I think it is. Is that right, Mr. Chair? Yeah, 37-32. The only difference between that bill and this one are two things. in the Section 2 of this legislation, it takes out Department of Public Health and Social Services. While in Public Law 37-32, it requires that it has to be the discretion and approval of the superintendent of DOE and the director of Public Health and Social Services. So listening to the both of you talk about, your demerits and what guidelines you are doing to inspect these schools, it sounds to me like the check and balance of having the Department of Public Health is really, really critical and important to have them there. So I'm not quite sure why you were taken out of the mix. Can you explain why you were taken out of the mix at all for public health, either or Terry or Francine? Can you answer that question? Why are you supporting this measure when you're being taken out of the mix of this check and balance of these important facilities that our children and the staff of DOE go to?
Point of information, Mr. Chair. I have an amendment to include public health.
Senator San Nicolas, Senator Taitigui has the floor right now. Thank you. Thank you on your point of information.
Francine and Terry, can you explain why you weren't there to testify on the 24th for the public hearing? That question, I would have asked you that question. And now you have the opportunity to explain your support of this measure without the inclusion of public health.
So, Senator, I think it might have just been an oversight on our end, but the call was to put public health back on the bill, as was in 3732. Okay. And I think I think the original bill was Senator San Nicolas's, so I don't know if it was just on both our ends an oversight to say where were we.
Thank you, Francine. Terry, did you want to add to that, or?
And Hafaday Terry, again, Acting Director for the Department of Public Health and Social Services. And it is my understanding, and I definitely can get some clarification, but that there was an amendment that was submitted in which would allow public health to be back into the actual bill. That's correct.
Okay. Are you also familiar in Public Law 37-32, what was also taken out was the reporting requirements for Guam DOE submitting monthly written reports. So maybe did that also include, since I have public health on the seat right now, did that also include that you would provide these written reports alongside with DOE, like in Public Law 37-32?
Yeah, right. Senator, I actually apologize, I don't have a copy of the actual amendment that was presented.
Not the amendment, the law itself, Public Law 37-32. Do you have a copy of that in front of you?
I have this. Nope. That's not it. What does it say? Oh, no, that's the same. Yeah.
Senator Taitigui, we are aware that that information has been removed, but the reporting requirements from public health has not changed. So from our perspective, our requirements to submit for variance reporting to the legislature is still something we're going to comply with. We are silent on GDOE's required reporting requirements.
Okay, so you don't have the bill in front of you. It basically says that, okay, so it says reporting required. So I'll go to Department of Education. Section 3 of this public law requires reporting requirements. Are you familiar with that? Either the superintendent or Mr. Anderson? anyone on the table, are you familiar with?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we're aware of
And
that requirement.
Has this, have you been complying to the law regarding this? Have you been providing these written reports?
As far as I understand, we have monthly oversight hearings with Senator Barnett, and in advance of those public hearings, of those oversight hearings, we provide documentation in terms of our progress and status.
Okay, so
I'll
do you-
defer to the superintendent to confirm that, but that's my understanding.
Superintendent, would you like to confirm that?
Yes, I'll confirm that. As we have been interpreting that, and we're reporting on a monthly basis to the Education Committee.
Do you have any problem with maintaining this section of the reporting requirements in this legislation?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so there's no problem. Okay, that's good to hear. So my next question would be going to, well, knowing that public health is now going to be in the mix of this, you know, I think what Mr. Pangilinan said, there was something that really struck me when he said that being held to a standard by public health. I think they're put in a place to ensure the safety and well-being of not just our students, but your employees at Department of Education as well. I'm pretty sure the Oversight Chair will probably shed some more light for our listening audience about really how bad some of these schools are. I just would hate to see, Mr. and Superintendent, you go back on your word to us. I remember asking you quite clearly that you would never put anybody in danger, any children in danger going to the schools, whether you know, it be something in the infrastructure or even has to do with rats running around the place or anything, that you would never open up a school if it was not safe for our children of Guam to go to. And I'm so hoping that this self-inspection was not going to be mirrored after something just to allow leeway for the sake of our children's safety or your employees. But knowing that Mr. Anderson has mentioned his self-inspections are based off public health, they mirrored public health. So that's good news. And I'm hearing that the self-inspections are they done by Mr. Pangilinan, the maintenance person, or is it done by your principals, the principals at each school?
The principals and their safety representatives at each campus.
And they are qualified to do these inspections?
They have been briefed in detail on the standards and the way they're scored. We've done that several times over the course of the year.
Okay, that's good to know. Really good to know. Mr. Superintendent, I know this has to do with Mr. Pangilinan because I know you're trying very hard to try and get these schools up to par. I know none of you sitting up there want to put our children in harm's way, let alone the employees of Department of Education. But the question I have would be the maintenance, continued maintenance of the facilities that have already been inspected and are open to our children. What efforts is Department of Education doing to ensure that they stay in that condition and not disregarded? Because one of the biggest problems we have in the government of Guam is maintenance cost. And here you're trying to ensure these schools are up and ready to go. And then once it's up and ready to go, you ignore it and start going on to the next school when it constantly, I'm sure Mr. Pangilinan, you know, as a maintenance individual with schools at the age of our schools right now, what it's required to maintain those schools is just as important as the inspection on the schools that are coming up. So what effort are you putting in to ensure that the schools that passed?
We're continuing to have our maintenance staff revisit schools, and we have an active work order process so that when administrators or the safety representative on campus discovers an area that needs attention, that work order is put in. We've also been able to expand our workforce from 30 to 50 maintenance personnel, so I have more folks that are available on call that we didn't have a year ago.
Okay, and you can still guarantee me, Mr. Superintendent, that you will ensure that once a school is opened by yourself, and now that we're going to bring back in Department of Public Health and Social Service into the mix, that you'll ensure that these schools are a school that you would put your own children in to go to school, that you have no problem having them going into a school that may have some major issues.
I am always concerned with the situation that any child is in, and that's a question that I ask, and I ask my staff, would you have your own child here?
Okay.
And if the answer, if you even have to pause to answer it, then there's a problem.
Okay.
I will say, and I want to repeat, that as we've gone through this process over the last school year, when a school comes up short and fails, I shut it down.
Okay.
The authority to work with the director of public health and decide whether or not we want to reopen one that failed, I've taken that off the table in terms of our practice, and our principals know that. If you fail, then you're going to be closed until you can pass.
Okay.
And we've done that twice, and it's been effective. And we continue to work on this process constantly. And I'm very much aware of the age and the condition of our facilities. And the things that they were engineered for 50, 60 years ago are not the reality we live in today. So there's a constant effort on our part.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Swanson, for that. Mr. Swanson, based on the testimony that was provided on July 24th during the public hearing by Mr. Anderson, there's a section in there that says the average cost incurred for preparing a school to pass an inspection is conservatively estimated at $7,547.53. If you take that cost and multiply it by 38 schools, including FBLG, Simon Johnson, who are double session, and the JFK lease agreement that is fully funded, the total annual cost of inspection is approximately $268,860. The GDOE budget appropriation for the past several years has been unfunded and unreasonable to allow the department to efficiently address critical facilities needed. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Superintendent, this body appropriated $20 million to the Department of Education to cover this cost. And then we were told that you gave this money to the administration, and we were quite concerned, why would you do that when this money was supposed to be given to the Department of Education? And I know we brought this up to you many times, but this testimony is just what, July 24th, complaining about funding issues. And yet, I'm not sure what happened to that $20 million that this body appropriated to you and where it is today and how much have you used, if you did use it. In the meantime, Mr. Chair, if I can we get a copy of Public Law 37-31 to provide to Public Health, as well as DOE?
Duly noted, Senator Taitagui.
While they're trying to answer my question. Thank you.
Senator, we'd like to give you the accounting of that $20 million, and we can break that out for you right now.
I'm sorry, say again. I'm just as deaf as you are, Mr. Superintendent. Can you say that again?
I said we can give you the breakout of that $20 million right now. The first $6 million paid for the National Guard to do mitigation of debris from Typhoon Mawar, and the balance we'll be able to tell you about right now. Yeah.
Yes, out of the 20 million, Senator, 6 million went to the National Guard for cleanup. Then this is coming from GSA. We have 8 million dedicated to mold mitigation, and that contract is down at, I believe it's at the GSA now for their review. We also have the fencing contract at 3 million, and we have a contingency of 3. But in light of Ukadu High, there's air cons that are down. and we're putting out a contract for 1.8 million on the repairs and the replacement of the contracts there, to include the lighting of the fields and some ADA compliance or public health compliance that we need to address in the restrooms. I know that it's a lead school, but we having, yeah. So, and then also we have the boots on the ground contract that we're trying to get through GSA, and it's a conservative number of $400,000. So we're trying to get the security services out to the schools, because as we speak, they're still breaking into the schools, Talofofo. We just had a break-in there twice over the weekend, and we're still getting broken into at Finagayan and Derrida Middle.
Yes.
So we're trying to get everything with that remaining money at GSA through all these contracts.
So of the 20 million, how much has already been expended?
Yes.
How much like it says 8 million for the mold and mitigation. You know,
Well,
that's been going on for a while now, but has that been expended? Or you're still trying to procure someone to?
So the thing is that we use 6 at the National Guard, and we're using 8 for mold mitigation, but that is a conservative number because we don't have an idea of what it's truly going to cost. So there's like a $3 or $4 million what is it?
Variance
Contingency.
Okay.
But out of that remaining money, we're trying to use it for air conditioners over at Ukadu High, and also the security services that are required to protect our schools that are being broken into now.
Okay, well, it's obvious the money hasn't even been expended, and when you ask for additional funding, you know, it's money that's like an emergency, you need it now. And that was $20 million, and I still haven't seen most of this other than the National Guard.
Thank you, Senator Taitagui. Your time has
Oh,
expired.
it is?
Yes.
Oh, already?
Look at that.
Okay.
Wow.
I haven't even gotten
Si Dos
to
Masi.
the rest. I get a second round, though.
Yeah,
Thank
do.
you so much, everyone, for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Senator Lujan, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here this afternoon. Dr. Swanson, you said earlier that the 18 schools that are yet to be inspected, that they're probably in better shape they're as good a shape as they were when they closed, or maybe even better because they've been worked on to date?
What was the last part of the question?
You said the schools since the end of the year are in better condition.
Right, they've been working on this. Yes, my comment was that they're in better condition than they were when the school year ended, because they have been working on them to prepare to open.
I understand, yeah. And Mr. Anderson, of the 18, you said 14 in yourself, I guess, inspection, that 14 may not meet the, I guess, the merits for passage of inspection?
Well, I believe Senator Barnett threw out a number. I know we put out a number.
I didn't just throw out a number. I did the research on the website with the self-inspection reports from the Guam Department of Education, and of the 18 schools awaiting inspection that I reviewed. It's on the website if you'd like to compile the information, but I got 14 out of 18.
Yeah, we were just somewhat guesstimating what that number was, but it looks like Senator Barnett was able to confirm the actual number. But yes, those are the schools that did their self-inspections, and they, based on their demerit score, it was 40 or greater.
Okay. Now, of those demerit scores, can you give us an example of what those are comprised of? I mean, you know, because we heard about, I guess earlier, the author of the bill talked about chips on tables and things like that. But in your self-inspection, I'm sure you've over the year that you had worked closely with public health. But in those self-inspections that may not garner the passage, what did you see that may constitute again non-passage? I mean, are these real severe? Are they structural stuff? Infestation of whatever it may be? What is it? Because we hear about demerits, but what are those flaws?
Well, in my estimation, in my experience in working with the schools and reviewing these self-inspection reports, none of the citations from schools are anything relative to serious, infrastructure issues or structural damages that could be, jeopardizing the integrity of a building. Nothing of that nature. They are things like equipment in disrepair. So again, if you've got air conditioning units that have been abandoned, or you've got ductwork in a, because let's say a certain area of the campus had central air conditioning system and it had ductwork, and that was bypassed, and we put in ducted split units. The fact that those things are still there, they get cited for equipment in disrepair, or you have equipment that should not be there and needs to be removed.
Got it.
But the the cost of trying to remove some of that existing work that's in the schools is costly.
Sure.
And so sometimes it's just easier to leave it in place and focus on some of the more immediate issues.
And I think because when you hear about demerits, I guess we have this sense of it's really dangerous and you can't even go to the classrooms. But as we speak, as we're speaking right now, and maybe they're off right now, but you have individuals probably working over there at the schools right now as we speak?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So you have human beings there right now as we speak, right?
Yes.
Okay, so my question is, I'm trying to find the difference between a school-related activity and human-related activities. Because if it's not, if the school is not good enough for students, how could it not be good enough for humans? My understanding, the last I understand, not Supreme Court justice, but biology says students and humans are the same thing. And so I'm trying to understand the difference between school-related activities, because as people are working right now at school, they're school-related activities to get school ready for work. For the opening of school. And the question was posed earlier about schools being used for voting. Now, that would be a 13-hour time frame for humans to be walking into the schools. That's a lot longer than a regular school day, is it not?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Are any of the schools preparing meals?
Say again, Senator?
Are any of the schools preparing meals? Or, lunches, breakfast?
We have 4 cafeterias that are operated by DOE, my understanding. Or 3.
3? Okay.
They're not operating currently, but
sure.
during regular school
Sure. But
operations.
you have an outside source that runs the
remaining, yes.
Yeah, okay. And are any of those cafeterias, what they're using, are they up to par with it?
My understanding is all our cafeterias that have been inspected are all passed. There's no issues with cafeterias.
So none of the schools that serve food are in jeopardy. Basically the cafeterias, none of them are in jeopardy, right?
That's correct.
Okay. That being said, trying to wrap my head around this, because we can cut through the chase. I know there's an amendment that's going to be, it's not my amendment, but I want to read it because I want to see if you agree with it. And if you agree with it, we cut to the chase and get this over with. Yeah. It basically says only after such schools have provided a written request for an inspection from the Division of Environmental Health of the Department of Public Health and Social Services, such schools may operate until inspection is complete. Do you agree with that statement?
We do not.
You do not agree with that?
And again, I'll defer to Public Health in terms of their understanding of Public Law 3731 as well, because I know Senator Barnett had made references to that particular law that indicated that the director or superintendent could submit a request or a written letter of exception indicating variances. And my understanding is that, again, that doesn't apply to allowing schools to operate, without an inspection. It's really just making reference to what we already do.
No. What I'm saying is that this is not. This is a proposed amendment. A proposed amendment to the bill. What I just read was a proposed amendment to the bill. It's not my amendment, but it's a proposed amendment. So I'm saying if this proposed amendment passes, do you agree with that statement?
I just don't think that that amendment will help our situation because well, again, if I may not completely understand Public Law 3731, but it does make reference to this written exception issue for variance. But we already do that now. When a school is up for inspection, we submit written requests to Public Health for consideration of variances, and they'll entertain that, and they'll either approve it or not approve it.
Okay.
But it has nothing to do with a school being allowed to operate without a full inspection and actually passing the inspection with less than 40 demerits, or 41 demerits. That's be 40 or less.
Okay.
So
I guess,
go ahead. Sorry.
I guess I can direct the question to Public Health then. So if this amendment should pass, do you, and you, the gentleman, you're from DPW, right? DPW, okay. DPW, I know they have like conditional uses, right? I mean, they've allowed for conditional uses, right?
This is 3731.
I mean, not necessarily the schools, but in other inspections, there are conditional uses that DPW may allow at times?
My name is Lyndon Kobayashi, the acting chief engineer for DPW. Are you talking more for like permitting construction?
Yes, yes, yes.
I do know that there is permit conditions sometimes that are allowed, but that's really more for like, more for like construction. Maybe certain parts are not ready yet.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So, with Ms. Salas, yeah. So, with this proposed amendment, then, would you agree with that? I mean, would that suffice to temporarily? I mean, it won't stop the schools from correcting what needs to be corrected. They need to continue, but will that amendment suffice? Again, to temporarily open the schools.
I'm sorry, Senator, can you read the amendment again just so
Okay.
I can hear it?
You know, and it's to section 2, and then it is inclusive. It says only after such schools have provided a written request for an inspection to the Division of Environmental Health of the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Such schools may operate until the inspection is complete. DOE schools that have failed inspection may continue to operate at the discretion and approval of superintendent of DOE. So that part, they're only after such schools have provided a written request for an inspection for the Department of, or Division of Environmental Health of Division of Public Health and Social Service. Such schools may operate until inspection is complete. It's not my amendment, but it's a proposed amendment.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, it's
Speaker Terlahi, on that point of information.
I don't believe that's the same as the amendment that's actually loaded on the drive.
I didn't even know we were doing amendments. So there's
On the drive.
Right, okay.
We're not on that part yet.
Right.
Yeah, it's an amendment that came from Public Health, from your director, your acting director.
You're talking about the amendment from the testimony that was provided?
Yes. Yes.
That actually, that's not an issue. Yeah, if they request, and then they request the inspection, they're allowed to remain open until the duration. That's our position. If they request it, they can remain open.
Okay, so are you saying they haven't requested then?
No.
Okay.
Because this is proposed amended language.
Okay.
What normally triggers, because Public Law 37.4 requires an inspection before a sanitary permit will be issued, the sanitary permit renewal application for the most part has been our trigger to say, hey, they're ready, we got to go out and inspect them because their sanitary permit's going to expire soon. If they go about it in this route, I think it's a little bit more feasible.
Okay. Again, when we're looking at this, of course, it's a temporary fix to get the schools open. It doesn't remove DOE from correcting the the problems they're seeing. And from what we hear, is that some of them are again air conditioners that are old that need to be taken away and things of that nature. Now, things like that, and if those demerits add up, a school will close down because an old air conditioner hasn't been removed, or old air conditioners haven't been removed. And if they've since been replaced by a new one, but the old one hasn't been removed, you know, again, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to wrap my head around the difference between the school-related activities and human-related activities, because as we speak, there are human beings that are trying to correct things, and I assume at this point, based on the demerits that may fail the school, that these folks that are there trying to fix the challenges or rectify the challenges are not in hazmat or anything of that nature. And so, that being said, what's safe for you is safe for me, safe for my son, safe for my daughter. I mean, and then, you know, we have a election coming up, which is a 13-hour gig versus, was it 8, 10-hour school day? 7? Yeah. So if it's safe for 13, I guess it's got to be safe for 7.
I think, Senator, the safety issue is in terms of using the facility for a one-time event, 1 day or 2 days a year and during an election year is very different from the daily learning and requirements in which are in our regulations, which are one, for the child that it has an environment that is conducive to them for learning, as is in our public health reasoning, but also this idea of old aging equipment.
Sure.
If it's sitting there, they could be pest harbor sites. You may not have a problem today.
I understand that completely, but we still have, because I understand that one-time use, but when I asked DOE, they have people every day working over there, so we have people every day, again, with old equipment and all that. So again, if it's unsafe for one human being, it's unsafe for all human beings. And if that's the case, if corrosive is an issue or things like that, then I don't think their folks are wearing hazmat suits in these challenged areas, are they? No, right? No, yeah. So I'm trying to wrap my head around the unsafeness, and I understand. Believe me, I wouldn't want my kids going to, you know, old air conditioners and rotting away and everything like that. But I wouldn't want my mom there as well. I wouldn't want my grandmother there as well. And so, you know, I mean, we're talking about human beings. We're not separating them out. I'm just saying, you know, what's the difference between school-related activities and human-related activities? Because we have human beings there on a daily basis, 7 hours a day. Anyway, that being said, thank you. Thank you very much.
Senator Lujan. Senator Brown, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to all our representatives from the different department and agencies. Here we are a year later. Of course, it was discussed by my other colleagues with the passage of what became Public Law 3731 and 3732, which was passed around the same time. Of course, 3732 was passed by Senator San Nicolas, and 3731 was sponsored by Senator Frank Blas, and I co-sponsored that with him so that we could extend the timeline for the schools to operate with the inspections not being completed, because we certainly had a very valid concern that we had our children there, having come through COVID, and certainly we had the typhoon, and yet a need to ensure that our children were still in the school system and still being educated. I know since that time, of course, our education chair has held a number of hearings on a monthly basis to get the status of DOE. So where are we now? I know you said it's outlined, but just in general for ourselves and for the public's awareness, with the schools that have already been inspected and have been addressed, we're now looking very shortly at the beginning of another school year. Of the remaining schools, what are the timelines you're looking in place to address those concerns? Because I know some were issues you could address within a reasonable time frame. Others were more extensive infrastructure that needed contractors to come in and do repairs. So how has that been whittled down? Because I think we recognize, obviously, this is not going to happen overnight. It didn't occur overnight. It's going to take time. But of course, for us and from our standpoint, and I'm sure from the parents and the public out there, I think we just want to get a good idea of how much more time are we talking about that DOE is going to need to address these issues of the existing remaining schools that have yet to be inspected, and of course the issues that require greater time and attention, or major construction or repairs that need to be done, so that we may be looking at this as a more normal process annually, being able to get these inspections in place and school operating, and this becoming a non-issue. Because when I was growing up in school, I don't recall discussions like this, or the legislature having to come in to make sure that schools are ready for students. Normally the summer was the time to do those repairs, refurbishments, repainting, and then school started and life went on, and we didn't have all these issues. So can you give us a general idea of where you are now versus where you were previously? And what time frames would you be looking at that most of these major concerns will be addressed so that you're back to a normal operation? If I can ask the superintendent of our public schools.
There's some variables in my answer. However, to be clear, I expect that we can finish the cycle of the remaining schools in the course of this school year. The first schools that will be inspected are the ones that are not in the refurbishment chain, because that work, depending on the campus, is going to take 3 to 6 months. Now, the contractors have got the order to proceed. We finally got those contracts deliberated, and they are funded.
Sorry, Mr. Superintendent, you're very soft-spoken. Either our audio can bring up your volume, or if you can speak a little more into the microphone, because...
I'll be louder.
There, very good. Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, the schools that were in the refurbishment contracts, we have 3 of the 4 contracts have already been signed and completed, and the contractor has the notice to proceed. That work, depending on the campus, will be 3 to 6 months. So those schools are scheduled in our program to be inspected last by public health, because it's not reasonable to inspect them while they're under construction. So in the meantime, we already have the queue set up. It averages about 2 schools a month, sometimes 3, to finish out the ones that are not in the refurbishment. And then we're going to start over with the reinspection of the schools that were certified last year. So that's a continuous process. And my goal in this process is to move the rating up 1 notch each time we do the reinspection. So we're going to go from a C to a B to an A. And I want to keep it that way. I need to remind this body, though, that in the 26 budget cycle, we're going to have to really look at how we fund capital improvement, because right now we're using ARP money. At the end of this fiscal year, that goes away. These contracts will be finishing up in the period that we're allowed to liquidate late. But after that, we have to change the pattern of how we fund our whole program for taking care of capital facilities. That's a conversation that we're going to have to really spend a lot of time working on, because as I look back on previous budgets, that money has not been there. So we have to find a better way to figure that one out, because we continue to have to invest in all of our facilities. Air conditioning systems wear out, plumbing backs up, as well, you know. So there's a constant cost, and I'm trying to capture during this next year, what does that look like on an ongoing basis? And we have in the 25 budget put in a $5 million marker for that purpose, to manage facilities maintenance. And the target is, once we get them inspected, to keep them of high quality. So that's a start. That's a proposal that's in our budget plan for the next 5 years, $5 million a year. We'll know better after we finish this cycle of work about how much that cost really will be, but that's where we started.
You said that the remaining schools you believe you'll be able to get inspected this year, this upcoming year, in the next 12 months?
I would say by the end of the school year, so it's nearly 12 months, and it really depends on the pace of construction for those refurbishment schools.
Okay, and out of the existing schools that have yet to be inspected, how would you, I guess, combine them so that you can say within, the next few months, these are the schools that we can be addressed, versus those that require certain areas that may require more construction or longer-term investment because of that construction. I mean, we previously discussed at these hearings that you would be able to segment these sections of the schools off, for example, so that the other operational parts of the school can still be used, and then these other areas that require additional work or are in construction can still happen concurrently while these classes are going on. Where are you with that, so we can get a general idea out of the remaining schools, what would require that more extensive work?
Now that we are able to talk with a contractor on that, we're actually sitting down tomorrow and working out the process for scheduling and phasing work on each campus. So the principals and our safety staff will be working with the contractor to line all of that out campus by campus, because obviously the needs are different on each one. But we are detailing it to that point.
And how many of the remaining schools that you have that require more extensive work, how many schools are we talking about?
The refurbishment schools, there are 10, maybe 11, because we're trying to add schools to that contract with the funds we have. The remaining schools, it's 7 or 8, and that's the ones we're going to start with. And our maintenance staff is targeting all of the schools that are not in refurbishment. For example, we're funding the materials and the labor to do the restrooms in all the schools, to refurbish all of those. So, and then we have a couple other schools that we need to go a little bit deeper, and we're letting separate contracts for that. So we're paying attention to all of them depending on their need. I wish that the funding would have been adequate to have all of the schools refurbished, but as we know, that just didn't turn out that way. Jimmy, do you want to give us a little rundown of what you're doing for maintenance?
Hi, Senator. So besides the refurbished schools of 10, we also we're putting a contract in place to refurbish all the restrooms on the non-refurbished schools. And we're also trying to bring them up to ADA compliancy. Also, we're doing all the fencing that needs to be repaired. We already have contracts for, it's about to come out, it should be coming out. We're trying to do 29 schools with all the fencing that are damaged, that we can't repair in-house, and the remaining 12 we're repairing in-house ourselves. So anything right now currently that's down, even if it's on the contract, we're trying to stand it up because of the theft. So that's ongoing right now. And we're also doing the Ukadu school. We're doing the air cons there, and we're trying to also bring their restrooms into compliancy with all the lights in the softball field, the baseball field, and the football field. So there is a lot going on now, and we're just doing what we can right now.
The testimony indicates that there's about $116 million of ARP funding that you guys have. Is that money that you've already essentially contracted for? I mean, are we to assume that when it does expire shortly in the next month or so, or the next, I guess September is right around the corner towards the end of this year, are you going to be able to expend all of that money so we're not returning any of it? And, you know, as you mentioned, financially the need of the Department of Education is there. So where are you with regards to expending that money and procurement of whatever services or construction work you may need?
We have got all but about $36 million obligated out of $260 million. Some of it's been expended, but it's all actually now got purchase orders against it, so it's technically, as far as the federal government's concerned, it's obligated, and we can draw against it, and we go late liquidation. We have until March of 26 to actually expend the funds.
Okay.
And I know that there was quite a bit of concern about looking at balance sheets that showed a lot of money. Well, now that we've moved these contracts and gotten them signed and activated, that's cleaned up the majority of that question.
So are you saying you'll be able to expend all of that 116 million remaining of the ARP funding?
Well, that 116 is now 36.
Okay, so the 36...
and we're going to spend it all.
So again, you'll be able to...
Oh, yes.
Okay, well, that's good news. We certainly want to track that. And with regards to your procurement, how have you addressed improving that? Because, I mean, I'm dumbfounded last year when we were told the reason that we're not able to facilitate is we don't have, you know, this is more money than we're used to dealing with, and we don't have the ability to procure. And then when we don't have the money, oh, we don't have the money, so we can't address the issues. So it was kind of like, okay, you have the money, you still can't perform. You don't have the money, you don't perform as expected. So how has that changed, and where are you with regards to your procurement? Because you do have that authority as a department. You can do that on your own without anyone else. We had all the issues back and forth with Homeland assisting, and that didn't really go anywhere. So where are you? Have you stood up your procurement division so that you can properly address your procurement and the needs of all these contracts to move forward and facilitate so that these issues can be addressed?
We've added 2 new folks to our procurement staff with a great deal of experience, and they're really good at expediting these measures and those things that we're having to do through Department of Administration. We're actually have someone that's working side by side with them, and we're preparing the work, but they're doing the actual procurement action, and that's been very successful. So we've retrained people, hired some new talent. We're able to do a lot more effective job now, and we have added also to our legal team, so our legal review goes faster before it goes to the AG. And those places where we can, in the context of good procurement law, we have tried to avoid going over $500,000 because we can handle that in-house and do it very quickly. That's how we're doing, for example, that's how we're doing the air conditioning on Estumbo Middle School. We're doing that in-house ourselves.
Well, it's good to hear things like with regards to procurement for your fencing. We're happy to hear that that's finally moving along, because that pretty much was like in neutral gear for quite a long time. So we're happy to hear that. And certainly as the months go on, we'll see how your progress continues with your department.
So, I mean, we're going to stay with it. That's all I can say is that, and some of the projects that Mr. Pangilinan talked about are at a level that they will need to go for AG approval and the governor's approval, and we're getting that sorted out so that when it gets there, there's no kickbacks. We get it taken care of and moved on. We're doing a much better job with scope of work and the details that go into contracts of that size.
This issue has come up over and over and over again that we hear about is the vandalism of the schools. And I know previous legislatures before our time looked at addressing that issue. Where is DOE with regards to that, or any plans you have in place to address security at these schools in the evening, either through putting up security cameras, or do you have anyone, or you're going to look at hiring anyone or putting anyone there in the evenings to patrol the schools to make sure that they're protected? Because we seem to have, repeated situations, and some schools in particular, it's almost a weekly event, and that really isn't what we want to see. I'm sure you want to ensure that these campuses are safe and maintained, and we don't have this continued vandalism. So knowing that that's a major problem and certain schools are repeatedly being hit, what steps, if anything, have been taken with DOE at this point to address that?
Right now, we have a request for proposal is out to provide boots on the ground security in evening hours. And we also have a budget wedge in our 25 budget for $2 million to add to the security systems that we have across the school district, so that will give us more technology as well.
Do you have any camera systems now that are installed in these schools so that you have an ability to observe, or there's somebody that's actually sitting there checking and reviewing in the evening hours to make sure that these schools are not being vandalized, or that people that shouldn't be on campus are not there?
I don't have a system that I would call reliable, and that's why we need to go back. There was a system initially installed several years ago, but the maintenance of that has fallen away, and we're going to go back and change it.
Well, I hope something's done with that, because it seems like the ball keeps getting dropped. I mean, progress gets made and the ball gets dropped, and we're back to square one. And it just doesn't speak well. I mean, it's costing more time and money, and we cannot operate the school system from where we're sitting. We can only set policy. You guys are the high-paid administrators that have to execute that. So it's concerning when that money's invested, and then a few months or a few years down the road, we end up finding out these things are not being maintained. It's very hard to absorb those type of explanations, because I think our bosses would tell us we'd be fired if we did that.
I would agree with you, and culture change is difficult, but we're making that change in the organization.
Well, we certainly look forward to seeing progress with regards to that. I do want to ask Public Health, if I can, with regards to your inspections, are there any issues of you being able to execute assuming Department of Education comes forth and says, you know, school X, A, B, C, and D is ready for inspection, are you able with all your obligations, and you have many facilities, obviously, that you have to inspect. There's other private schools, charter schools, restaurants, beauty facilities, the list goes on. But are you able to accommodate if they are able to come forth and say, as you've been able to address the schools that have already been inspected, is that an issue for you in terms of time-wise planning? You mentioned it takes on average about a week or so. Maybe follow-up depending if there are corrections that need to be made, that you have to be able to go back and re-inspect a school facility. Is this something that you can absorb in the next year, these remaining schools that still have yet to be inspected by public health?
So we've spoken last year regarding our shortage of staff, but we also said the priority is the schools. Yes, we have 25 other mandates that our tiny staff that we're trying to grow is working on, but school is a priority, and it's pretty much up there. It's my focus, and I work closely with our inspectors so to make sure that the inspections happen based on the readiness state. We do it as fast as we can. We can even, as fast as humanly possible, to get a quality inspection, and also to give GDOE the opportunity to make the kind of corrections they need that are easy one-off fixes that they might have just missed, or it was good 2 days ago, but something happened because some of these schools actually were in operation while we were inspecting. So we can respond and we prioritize. Of course, as usual, something will fall short, some of our attention will, but it is our goal to, ideally, 12,000 potential children are going to attend these schools. It's a priority for us.
And with regards to who partners with you on these inspections from DOE, I mean, is it just the central maintenance staff, or do you have individuals assigned in each of these schools so that we don't end up in the same situation because nobody takes responsibility because nobody's there on a regular basis? Do you have anyone from the school that's there so that they know what the issues are, or maybe things that they regularly have to maintain? Not just, structural, but just the operations and sanitation that have to be done on a regular basis. Who's your point of contact within the school so that there's ownership of what these issues are, so that we're not, where there's unnecessary need to repeat the problems? Or do you have anyone there that's your point of contact regularly that is absorbing all this so that we're not back to square one again?
I know for a fact that the facilities and maintenance people follow our inspectors around, but the credence and the information is always initially given to the principal.
Okay.
At the end of every day of inspection, they kind of give this brief overview. So if the principal is not following one of the inspectors around themselves, they usually have other staff following them around. So I do know they give they come on site, they kind of say, this is the map you provided us, this is the cordon off areas, we're going to inspect, and at the end of each day, they kind of give the findings, and I'm assuming, because I'm not GDOE, I'm assuming the principal and the facilities and maintenance people get together and address, so that if it can be corrected in a day or so, they'll bring it to the inspector's attention the next day or so.
Well, I appreciate your answers, and again, I know it's quite a monumental task you have in doing all the inspections, but it's good to know that would not be an obstruction to addressing the remaining schools. I do want to ask one other question of you from Public Health, and maybe some of you have not been there long enough, but I'm kind of curious to go back to the beginning. How did we get in this situation in the first place where Public Health was not doing these inspections and simply giving these permits every year, signing off on them and giving them to DOE without any inspection? Do any of you know how that process ever started?
Okay. I'm going to preface this with the fact that I wasn't there, but I'm being told. So new regulations were adopted for schools, these type stricter regulations that we operate of now, effective 2019 with 5 years to implement, okay, for existing schools. Now, I honestly have not seen or looked at the regulations prior But I know the law does say that we are required to inspect, this is prior to the change, every quarter, every establishment permitted. However, I know that it's been said in testimony over this body in previous terms that on average, conservatively, we have 3,000 permitted establishments. And based on that equals to 12,000 inspections a year. And that seems impossible with anywhere from 8 to 10 inspectors. If we were to meet that, you're not getting a quality inspection and one that really applies the rules and regulations when they're inspecting. But I know that the management of environmental health and whoever, leadership of public health has actually gone for advice through the Office of the Attorney General and has asked, give us some guidance. We can't meet these regulations. How do we move forward? And so because of our staff shortage, we tended to respond in order of complaints as well as any sort of establishment that we permit that houses, services, any highly susceptible population. So hospital cafeterias, daycares, and that's such. So we have that focus and we're unable to meet everything quarterly to do the quarterly inspections. That's why with the recent passage, I think it's 3787, Public Law 3787, which actually allows us to do the inspection based on risk and the risk levels of what potential exposures that may be there. So when we develop, we are actually, I think, almost in process of developing our requirements to determine risk based on guidance with US FDA and a couple of other federal regulations. And we're going to base it off of that. But there's things like schools, which no fail, at least 1 year, we're going to inspect them. There's temporary workforce housing, which in our current law, based on the phase you're in, it's anywhere from quarterly to annually. There's child care facilities, which we inspect every quarter, as well as the hospital cafeterias, places like St. Dominic's, that sort of thing.
Now that you have the original schools that you inspected this past year that have passed, now the timeline has come so quickly, you have to go back and re-inspect them. Are you going to be able to do both, to go back and inspect those schools and, well, at the same time, do the other half of schools that have yet to be inspected? In
this past school year, we managed to, I believe, get like 14 schools inspected. And then, of course, there was lag time. There was time in between where GDOE was not ready that could have been committed. The only sort of hiccup I see is with and I don't know where GDOE is on this, but I imagine even with the staff of 50, they're going to be focused on schools that haven't been inspected. Then they're going to focus on schools that are up for reinspection. So the readiness level we can try to respond to, but I don't know what their readiness level would be in terms of all the schools involved.
Okay, I appreciate that. One other question to DOE is I inquired of Public Health. How are you addressing at the school level? Because we've also been through this back and forth at these hearings with the principals, some of them coming back and saying the reason these issues haven't been addressed is we haven't gotten the response or attention from DOE Central. Whether that's true or not, that I have to leave to the parties that are involved, but of course we're at the stage now where those type of explanations are not acceptable. So Mr. Superintendent, what steps have you put in place so that we have what I call and what we see as ownership of these schools at a school level, so that as these inspections are occurring, as these corrections are being made, you know, aside from just having the inspections, but preparing for them, who on DOE at the school level is working hand in hand in this process so that they know with the upcoming inspection again, if they're being re-inspected, There's somebody there who can account and answer or make sure they facilitate whatever corrections or improvements need to be addressed so that, you know, we're not back to square one, because the fact that there is not consistent ownership of each school is bothersome. Because I love that job. I want to be able to say, you know, they just don't give me the resources, they don't respond, they ignore me, and I'm getting there and I got my 6 figures and I'm going up for retirement soon. What do I care? I think we've seen that too many times. So what is being done to address ownership at the school level to help correct? Because it sounds like there's only really a few people or a few key sections that are working on this, even though I'm sure there are many within the school system that want to see their school improved where the need is there. But what are we doing to address that sense of ownership so that if there's a problem, it's corrected, it's addressed, or making sure that these schools are maintained so that we don't get back to this crisis situation where we're having to come in and address legislation once again for something we almost have no direct control to address because we don't operate these schools. We don't manage these schools. That's, you know, your responsibility.
The connection is generally, first of all, through the principal, and then they have safety liaisons that they've appointed in their staff that are tasked with coordinating with our maintenance and safety people. That's the model that we're working with, and it is new to the district, and folks are at different levels of being competent in it, but that's one of the priorities I have in how we evaluate principals, and then we do on-site drop-in and check for ourselves. I mean, I do that. Dr. Adamas is on campuses, and so are my other deputies.
And you have one in each, you have these in each school now?
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you for responding to my questions. Thank you very much, Mr.
Senator Brown. Vice Speaker, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask questions, and literally thank the panel for being here all afternoon. I do have a couple of questions. Some I hope they're not redundant, but I just wanted to make sure, Mr. Chair, I do have a proposed amendment that's already in the drive, but I wanted to make sure that I ask these questions because I want to be able to make sure that this August body gives the opportunity to make sure that our students have a safe place to go to, but more importantly, the education is key, and that they'll be allowed to work with all the school campuses and be able to go to them. So my first several questions would be for Guam DOE, and anybody on the panel there can answer this. Of the 18 campuses, school campuses, I know that the bill says 19, but I think we'll make a change based on the updates. Yet to be inspected, how many would pass an inspection if it were held today of the 18? I guess Jimmy or Chris or anybody there. It's really...
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I'm smiling because I'm not really sure how to answer your question. I mean, conservatively, I would like to say that I think most of our schools would have an issue with trying to pass an inspection. But I would be giving a guess and perhaps maybe saying maybe of 5 of those perhaps could pass an inspection today if they were being inspected. But there's a very good chance that they would have a difficult time passing an inspection, which is why I was stressing earlier that, you know, the rate of inspection has been on DOE, and that we've been trying to be slow and methodical with turning on these inspections because we want to make sure with 90% or greater assuredness that the school is going to pass the inspection. And so our schools have a lot of issues to address. And again, that's not to say that schools are unsafe. And I think there's an important distinction between a school that's safe and a school that can be issued a sanitary permit. Because that's what we're talking about here. These are schools that need to go through demonstrate that they're able to meet the regulatory requirements for public health to be issued a sanitary permit in order to operate. That's very different from, is a school safe to operate? And as I mentioned earlier, all school principals have submitted their declarations that their schools are safe and ready to open.
Okay.
But again, to your question, could the remaining 18 or 19 schools that need to be inspected, could they pass an inspection today? I mean, my humble opinion would be no.
Okay, so then let me ask this question. Of the 18 school campuses yet to be inspected, how many require substantial work that would take 3 or more months to complete? That's probably a tighter question.
Well, the superintendent mentioned about the schools that are up for refurbishment, and that's 10 to possibly 11 of those schools. And as Mr. Pangilinan indicated also, there's work in progress now to try and establish a big contract to try and address a lot of the sewer and restroom issues that we have with all of our facilities, not just these 18 schools, but, well, all the schools that are not part of the refurbishment contract. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but.
So out of the 18, you're saying there would be 10 to 11 schools that would need more than the 3 months to complete?
I believe so, and that's just giving a best guess.
And do you have a breakdown or a listing of all those issues of concern that will take time? Is it a procurement issue? Is it just based on the contracting or the employees that need to fix that? Is there a list to all these things that would probably take the work, the scope of work that will need to be done?
I believe so. I'll defer to Mr. Pangilinan in terms of what facilities and maintenance is doing, but obviously, yes, for these contracts, they have identified the scope of work which needs to be done and what schools are to receive that work. So yes, I would think
and
that we
that's
do.
readily available, right? If asked, right?
Yes, Senator, the scope of work is, the 11 schools that we're discussing right now is the schools that are going to get the refurbishment. So those will take about 6 months, 3 to 6 months, or even a little bit longer, depending on what they're finding, because there's still some unforeseen issues. The remaining schools, when we go into the schools, we walk through the schools with the principals and we look at it. And so what we see outside, we say 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. But once we start breaking into the school, we see the termite infestation, stuff that we can't see, right, with the naked eye. So, but currently, so far, we are around the 4 to 6 week mark, even with the unforeseen stuff.
The 46%?
No, 4 to 6 weeks for each
4 to
school.
6 weeks.
That we haven't been inspected yet.
Okay. So then what are the determinations that are made before scheduling an inspection with public health? What determinations are made before scheduling an inspection with DPHSS?
If I may, every week we have the School Readiness Task Force that meets, and we actually go over the schools. It's on the website, and so we have a listing where we are intentional with the schools that we are going to focus on opening. So, for example, we have Department of Public Health is now at Marshall Sablan, but at the same time, we have some facilities and maintenance personnel at Astumbo Middle, so they can start working on some things. So there's that shift. Once public health is done there, then they are at Astumbo Middle. But even while that's happening, we have some facilities and maintenance workers who are going to be at JM Guerrero. So we plan, it's intentional, it's 4 to 3 weeks preparation, it's getting the equipment and supplies that we need to ensure that when they do find that there's a termite infested wall, they're not just going to break down that wall and change that plywood, it's probably the whole section. So it's going to be a setback, but it's more work that will need to be done to ensure that when the inspectors come in, they don't see the droppings from the termites and then call us out on it for a vector, for example. And so it's intentional. Over the summer, our principals completed what we call the school readiness report. This is where we are looking at number of teachers that they need, number of clerks and school aides that they need, number of sinks that are working that are required by public health regulation, number of urinals, number of toilets. And then on the bottom is the CIP projects that are pending, the bullet points items that facilities and maintenance need to address. And so over the summer, every week, we are now on, I think, week 7, prior to the submission of the Declaration of Readiness. I've been monitoring those reports so that I can actually work with HR to say, hey, where are we with the schools and the personnel that they need? I can talk to Jimmy and say, hey, Jimmy, this school has constantly been reporting that the sinks underneath the sinks, the brackets are rusty. You know, can we get that changed? Capital improvement, I can get a hold of Nick and say, hey, Nick, what's the status of this? So it kind of helps the principals to alleviate their anxiety that their school, they need to know that their school is being monitored and that we are targeting their schools for the repairs or the personnel that are needed so that they can run smoothly and efficiently when school starts. And then this past week, we had the principals state where they are in terms of opening their campus. Do you feel your campus is safe to open? And this is despite inspection because, like Chris said earlier, having a school that is safe and conducive to learning doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a public health inspection passing grade because we have these 18 schools that haven't been inspected yet. So the only two issues that came up really with the readiness was, number one, we have 2 schools that are, the issue was that we're having double sessions, so they have to have a modified bell schedule. Otherwise, everybody else is confident that they are ready to open. We had our safety building, what is Ed Brown's position? Safety administrator validate the school readiness reports in connection to the self-inspections. So there's almost like a 4 or 5 way cross-reference check and balance so that now the superintendent has those readiness reports and he can countersign and attest to the community and to you, our policymakers, that our schools are ready to open. And that's the big picture.
And that's online?
Yes, ma'am, it's online. If you go to our website and you look at the public health inspections, look at the blue-colored folders. I color-coded it yesterday for easier reference.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
To public health, can you give us some detail on how the Division of Environmental Health handles inspections of health-regulated establishments like schools? And let me give you this. For instance, when it is appropriate to outright fail an establishment, when is it appropriate to offer conditional uses or variances, and when is it appropriate to offer a reinspection that allows for corrective action to be made that addresses violations found by GEH staff?
So there's a few things that trigger an inspection. Any type of establishment, 9 out of 10 times, it's a complaint. If we were to, the course of any inspection that does happen, any health-regulated establishment operator can apply for a variance throughout the course of the inspection. But from there, and when it comes to reinspection, the idea, again, just much like it falls with GDOE, is really up to the operator. How soon are they going to make the corrections? How long will it take them to make those corrections? And it is upon them to request from us a reinspection or follow-up inspection to see, and maybe it's a combination of things. Maybe it's actually items that have been corrected physically, and maybe it's variances that are also proposed to basically help them pass, but they're mitigation standards and they're meeting it through their variance request.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, and I know this may have been answered earlier, but from this perspective, how many or what percentage of other educational establishments like the university and the community college and private schools have been inspected? Or at what percentage or how many?
Well, every new school, which there aren't many, but I think the newest one was a charter school a few years ago, brand new construction. That was probably the school that was inspected per the newest regulations. So that's probably it. Public Law 37-4 only requires the annual inspection prior to sanitary permit renewal for GDOE schools. It hasn't since the actual regulations aren't in effect for everybody, every other school until 24-25, this would be the season for us to either potentially go out and inspect or check in with our regulated schools and see where they're at. But historically, the issues have never really been at the private schools, and the charter schools are, I don't know what their maintenance is, but the complaints have not come from there.
Thank you very much for that answer. Mr. Chair, just a couple of more. So this question would be for both GDOE and Public Health. I want to clarify what you mentioned to my good friend from Barrigada, because it states Public Law 37-32 says GDOE is, quote, authorized to operate schools that are awaiting inspection for the school year 2023-2024. So can you repeat to make it clear to us and to the listening audience that your reading of that provision means none of the 18 schools pending inspections should be operating as a school because the 23-24 school year has ended? Did I understand that correctly for both of you? Please answer.
Yes, you did.
So it is correct. My statement is correct. But
That's our interpretation, and we also checked with our legal counsel, and that's how he read it.
Yes, that's correct.
okay. Public Health?
For public health, that's our understanding as well.
Okay. So was this interpretation brought to you by legal counsel? And I know DOE, you said it was, yes, right?
That's correct. As I read the law, that's the way I looked at it, so I verified that with our legal counsel.
Our legal counsel is the Office of the Attorney General, and there might be a slight conflict to opine any of opinion. However, based on Public Law 3732, we read it as it ended as of school year 23-24.
Thank you very much, Francine. So now to GDOE, can you confirm that none of these 18 schools pending inspections are being used as schools? And I'll add to this, meaning you are not holding any summer activities, nor are your teachers or 12-month employees working at these sites, right?
We do have employees working at the sites. There are no students on site. Then the faculty has not come back yet.
Thank you. Have you been assured by legal counsel that you're not violating any of the laws by operating a school that does not have a valid sanitary permit? Just checking to make sure.
I haven't put that particular question to legal counsel, but my interpretation is that we should not be operating until we have the legal authority.
Thank you very much, Dr. Swanson, for that. Mr. Chair, thank you for giving me the opportunity to ask this number of questions. Like I said, I did have an amendment for the third round, and just trying to better understand what we can do to assist DOE, and I know what public health is up against and how they're working based on the manpower and what their obligations are too. So I'm hoping that we all can come up with an amicable resolution to assist in this, is because these are our facilities, and as a policymaker, I think it's really important that we work on all of this together. And I really appreciative, Mr. Chair, that both Public Health, DPW, and DOE are here. Sizus Masi.
Agulokwi, Vice Speaker. Senator Shelton, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the DOE and the Public Health and Public Works folks who are here today to answer all of our questions. I'd like to ask first, we're talking about these 19 public schools, or as was shared by the panel, 18 now, 18 public schools that won't meet the inspection deadline of June 30th, 2024. And then 11 of these schools are being refurbished. So these 11 schools, even if they wouldn't pass any inspection, we already know that. We're moving forward here. Is the plan that these schools won't open at all this school year, or at least in the first semester of the school year?
No, that's not accurate. We plan to open them, but we have to work also with the contractor so we can cordon off sectors of the campus while they're being worked on.
Okay, so there is a possibility that these schools will be able to open a certain section of the school.
That's correct.
Okay. And of these 18 schools, what is the total number of students that will be affected if this bill were not to pass in this emergency session?
We're approximately 12,000.
12,000 students. And the schools that are being refurbished, we're going to section off the parts that are going to have the work done on them, so students will still be allowed to go to those schools. Will the entire school population still be able to fit in those schools? Is there a potential for a double session or students having to attend a different school?
Our intent is to have a normal schedule.
Okay, so if this bill were not to pass and the 18 schools with the 12,000 students who are affected, where will they go?
We would have to double up on the other campuses that are open. And there's multiple complications when you do that, with transportation, with time allocation. And we had quite a bit of that last year, you'll recall, at the beginning of the school year, and that's not a good plan, but that's the only option we have other than to not have to put everybody online, and we know that doesn't work real well.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot coming out of COVID that students need to be in the classroom, have the full school experience. They've lost so much already in the last few years that this is something I know that many senators here don't want to see happen again. And so we want to do what's best for our students and what they rightfully deserve. So I appreciate that information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Shelton. At this time, we're going to recess until 10 a.m. Tomorrow. We'll be back in Committee of the Whole at 10 a.m. tomorrow.